What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined by Alex Bratty, who is a life coach, motivational speaker, and author of From Chaos to Clarity. Now, her work helps clients transform their lives by empowering them with personal development techniques, resources, and processes so that they can take action to create and live the life they truly want. She lives by the belief that we can all find happiness, abundance, and joy, that we can realize our true potential and enjoy success in whatever we choose to do. We just need to discover what we truly want, rather than what we think we should want. Alex Bratty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kevin. It's great to be here today.
No, it's always a pleasure to have you, to have the people on like yourselves who are trying to really help us individually, improve ourselves, which can only improve the people around us as well at the same time. So it's always an honor to have people like yourselves on. And what a great book, From Chaos to Clarity. Before we get started, I always like to have a bit of a background. So just tell us a bit of a background on yourself that led towards this book, if we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So I spent about 15 years of my life in the corporate research world and did very well there, made it to the top of my field. I was a partner in a very prestigious firm in Washington, D.C. And it was one of those stories where from the outside, it looked like I had it all, right? I had the big job and the clients, and I was flying all over the country doing work for them. But in actual fact, inside, I was kind of dying a little more every day because over time, it just became unfulfilling for me. And I was spending more and more time away from my loved ones and just so much time devoted to this work. And yet I wasn't actually enjoying any of it anymore. And it really got to the point where I had to evaluate and say, okay, do I want my life to continue this way and be this way 10, 20, 30 years from now? And the
Yeah.
answer to that was definitely not. In fact, it made me want to get into the fetal position thinking about that. And so it really meant change, right? And of course, that meant me changing because no one else was going to change my situation for me. So a few years ago, I kind of embarked on my own little personal journey, self-discovery. I hired a life coach and just over time became so much more self-aware and conscious of the fact that I was creating this life. And that's a hard pill to swallow at first because, especially if you are not enjoying where you're at, if you're in a situation you don't like, how did I create that? That's kind of a difficult one. So, but once I wrapped my head around that, it became really clear that, well, gee, if I created this without even realizing it, imagine what I could do if I was being much more deliberate about it. And just the knowledge of that and knowing that I had sort of opened up all these other possibilities, I realized that I just couldn't stay where I was anymore. It was just time to sort of step out of that and into something new. And so over time, it became clear that I wanted to help people navigate their challenges, similar to me, that were burned out with work, stressed, overwhelmed, stuck in their lives. And so I became a certified coach. I also, of course, wrote the book. And the book really was kind of a culmination of me putting together kind of how I went from being really stuck and frustrated with where I was to getting unstuck and very clear about what I wanted to create. But it's really not just my story because, everybody's got a story, right? Like, who really cares? It's more about how can the reader kind of take the tools and techniques and processes and use them for themselves so that they help them in their story, right? So you can translate all of the things that I lay out in the book, kind of like a roadmap, and follow it step by step so that you can take what works for you and get yourself unstuck and get things moving again.
Yes, absolutely. So, and you are living proof of the process that you write about as well. So, I mean, you have lived it.
That's right. Yes, I've absolutely lived it. All that's in there, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and all the fears that come up. And, it obviously wasn't easy to sort of make that transition and leave all that behind. I had a lot of, that negative chatter coming in and talking to me. But that's sort of the beauty of those processes and some of the things that I have in the book that you can learn how to navigate those and how to essentially sort of quiet all that negative chatter and tap into what is really your true self and the positive talk that you can hear from yourself. And that part of you that actually has all the answers to those questions that are burning inside you. We think that someone else is going to come along and give us the answer or our situation will just magically change. No, I got news for you. It won't. It's really about you and just tapping into who you truly are because you do have all those answers within you and you do have all those answers in terms of how do I get unstuck? How do I get my life moving again in the direction that I want it to go?
And that's why you've come across this interview at this moment right now, because you're ready to listen.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the universe putting it all together. That's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got a lot of questions here. All right. Well, I actually do want to know this question as well. This question was sent in to me as well, but it's a question I would have asked is, how does this book, in your opinion, different from other sort of self-help books that are already in this field as well?
I love that question because, there's already, thousands, millions of self-help books. Wow, another one. What are we going to do with that one? And I think the answer for that is, there's, as I see it, there's one key difference with my book, and it's this. So many of those books that are out there essentially take, one aspect of this personal development world, or, a sort of a slice of it, and take a deep dive on that. And that's great if you want to focus on one particular aspect. But if you're in a place where this whole idea of self-awareness and personal development is new to you, and you really don't know where to start because you really do feel very stuck, my book is essentially a soup to nuts guide. And it really does take you all the way from from stuck to unstuck, and really lays out a roadmap and gently kind of guides you along that, right? So there's step by step throughout it, different processes to use and different sort of aspects to look at, so that you essentially can unravel this sort of, if you feel like it's the chaos or the mess or whatever it is, you can unravel it all and start to make sense out of it. So it's the idea that it's a full roadmap to get you from A to Z on your personal development journey.
Absolutely. Now, we're only going to touch on a few of the bits of the book here. I mean, it may sound like we're going into a bit of detail, but there's no way we're able to do that in the 51 minutes that we have. So we're going to sort of skirt around some of the subjects. But of course, the links to all of the book are on the page right now, and on the screen, shall I say, as well. And it's available, obviously, from Amazon and all, mainly. Is that right?
That's right, Amazon, and you can get it any which way you like it. Paperback, Kindle, audio, it's all there on Amazon.
Oh, audio. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one to do as well. Okay, then. Well, let's try to get into it, as we are. Now, how do we know if we are stuck, in a sense? Am I stuck?
Right. How do I know that in the first place? Well, most people do, because it is such a sort of constricted feeling, like you just cannot get things moving the way you want them to. But I mean, to give you some examples, so if you feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? Kind of like Einstein's definition of insanity, you're stuck. Or if you're feeling burned out, or you're just so overwhelmed with work or whatever's going on in your life that you don't know how to change it, you're stuck. And if you have those feelings of frustration, if you are essentially, feeling depressed, sad, regret, disappointment, I mean, all those kind of lower vibrational feelings, all of those, if you have any of those about your life or where it's headed, or even different aspects of your life, chances are you are stuck. Whether it's sort of, you feel it's your whole life or just one aspect, whether it's your work, your family, your relationships, whatever. But those feelings are very persistent, and they don't go away until you start to address them. So if you have any of those kind of feelings going on, chances are you're stuck right now.
Right, that's interesting. So we're not just talking about jobs or relationships, which is a big one. It could be a number of things, even to the point, that you maybe your work-wise, it's okay, you're going down the right path of what you should be doing because you found purpose, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it could be as well that you're actually stuck with life in the picture of maybe it's not the life that you want. Maybe you feel like you've sort of hermitized yourself in a way, and you're just work, and there's no other sort of fun there as well. Could that be the same? Is it the whole extremes here we're talking about?
Yeah, so I think it's important to recognize that there's so many different aspects of our life. And so while one part may be going really well, sometimes other parts are not. And the fact is that those other parts that aren't going so well for us, they do impact the other aspects, because I mean, let's face it, we are holistic beings, right? We have our work, we worry about money, we have our family, we have relationships, we have social settings, we have community, we have spiritual. I mean, all these different things play into who we are. And so if you're really focused on one aspect of it, maybe you'll get it going great, but at the expense of the others. And that's actually what happened to me. I mean, I was so laser focused on my career that, here 10, 15 years passes, and I sort of, when I finally kind of wake up, which is what it felt like for me as I started to, become more self-aware, I kind of realized boy, I have almost operated my life on autopilot for the last decade. I essentially put to sleep all my other parts of me. I mean, I had friends, don't get me wrong, and, I have relationships, but was I spending time there? Was I nurturing those the way they needed to be? No, not really. And so, everything's great over here, but at the expense of these other things. So it is about looking at that balance. And are you finding fulfillment in all these different aspects of your life? Because they're all interconnected at the end of the day.
Yes, that's very interesting. And just one quick question. Now, obviously, all that time's gone by from where you were to where you are now. Have your friends changed? Have other things
That's
changed?
such an interesting question. Some of them have. Some of them have not, because I've had such wonderful friends. I've been blessed that I've had some friends for many, many years, and they've already shown themselves to be wonderful people. Because, let's face it, life has its ups and downs, right? And you can find out who your friends are pretty dang quick when that happens. But yeah, as I've moved into this new world and I'm kind of in this personal development space, yeah, some people have kind of fallen away because either it's not for them, or maybe they don't approve of what I'm doing or whatever. But that's really their thing, right? It's not my thing. And in place of that, though, I'm finding new friends and new acquaintances that are sort of aligned with where I'm at and what I want to be doing. And I think, you raise such an important point. Who we surround ourselves with can be such an important part of our life. I think it's Jim Rohn. He's a motivational speaker, and he says you're essentially the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So do look around you, see who you're spending time with, because if some of those people in your life are not supporting you, if they're trying to put you down, if they're discouraging you in any way, that has an impact on, how you choose to live your life. So you want to look at those 5 people and see, am I surrounding myself with people who love me, who support me, who lift me up, not drag me down? So I love that you brought that up, because it has such an impact on us in many different ways.
Doesn't it just? And I bet when you look back at how much change that you've been through, because you're a different person now, and that plays out in the book as well. That does. But just moving on as well quickly, this is very interesting, by the way. What do you think, though, that there's a price to pay? That whatever it is that we concentrate on, there's a price to pay in other parts of our life, so we can never have that true balance.
There can be. I mean, and this is where the whole idea of choice comes in, right? I mean, we do have a choice. We have a choice in how much time we spend in our work. We have a choice in how much time we spend with our family. And I know sometimes it may feel like we don't have a choice. Like, well, I want to be home with my family, but my boss is making me stay late to work, right? But if that bothers you over time, if that's something that repeats over time, that you're constantly being held at work when you'd rather be home with your family, then maybe it is about reevaluating that, about talking to your boss about renegotiating hours, or, and this would be an extreme, but maybe it's about time to look for a different job if what you value is being home at night with your family. So it's really about what works for you. Some people, they throw themselves into one part of their lives and that's what they love, and that is their balance for them. For other people, it's more about having more, not a 50-50, but a more equal balance between where they spend their time and what they're focused on. So that is something that we all have to sort of experiment a little bit with and find out what really works for me, what makes me feel most fulfilled and alive. But I do think it's possible to create the balance that you want. The point is that you have to make choices and decisions around what those are, and then take the steps to create that so that you have whatever it is you want and you define as your balance in your life.
So someone that turns around to you, that's going through a coaching process with you, that says, well, listen, there's a price to pay. If I want to earn this much money, or or achieve the end results of whatever it is to set this business up, or whatever it may be, there's a price to pay. There's always a price to pay in another area of my life. I can't have it balanced. I just know that I won't be able to do both. But you're saying, actually, if you're fair to yourself, you actually could do.
You can. And I think, the way you frame that brings up another area, right? So if someone's coming from that place, they're coming from that mindset.
Yes.
So whatever you believe is going to happen. If you believe that there is a price to pay, if you believe that you've got to give things up over here to create things over here, guess what? That's exactly what you're
You
going to
create that
experience.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, it really is about what our beliefs are and where we're coming from. That all that internal stuff that creates our outward reality. So, in that instance, I mean, I would talk to that particular person to understand where those beliefs came from. Why do they think that it's so definitively set that way? And does it have to be? Maybe they can shift their mindset because let's face it, there's lots of people out there that are earning a handsome living and not working themselves to the bone. And why is that? Because they believe that they can do it. They're coming from a different mindset. They feel that they can create a lot of financial abundance and yet also have abundance in their family life, in their relationships, in their downtime. So it's really about your mindset and where you're coming from. So you create your own reality. And if you come in with that preset notion that I got to pay a price, then sure. But if you come in from a different mindset, then you experience a different reality.
Very interesting. You're right. It's the reality that you create. And I get told that by so many people. We create this reality. So we have to be careful. We have to be so careful with our thoughts sometimes, don't we? Because it's us that are putting ourselves in that situation in that present moment. So
Exactly.
it's a very, very, very good point there. Actually, that you with what I asked you there. Actually, be careful of your thoughts. Think those. Think your life as the way you want it to be in the present moment. Well, actually, think your life as though is the life you want it to be. It may not be that life now, but if you think of the life that you want it to be, you attract it to you, even though you're not lying to yourself, but you're bringing it into your space.
That's right. That's right. I mean, whatever you place your focus on is what expands in your world. So, and here's where it's so easy to spend your time focused on what you don't enjoy. I mean, people are very quick to complain, right? Oh, this didn't work today. That sucked. I missed the bus. It's pouring rain. Whatever it is. Well, if that's what you're focused on, then that's what you're going to get more of, more kind of crappy, sucky experiences. But if you take a moment and look at what you do have and what's going well in your life, what's right about your life, that's more of what you're going to experience. So it's very much, I mean, where thought goes, energy follows. And that energy is what starts to attract those things to us, right? Because we're all sort of vibrating with this frequency. We're kind of like little radio signals, right? Sending out different frequencies out there. And so those frequencies seek similar frequencies. So if I'm vibrating with a frequency of, hey, you know what, life is pretty dang good, I feel good about stuff, then that's the other stuff I'm going to attract people like that. I'm going to attract good experiences. But if I'm walking around, with the gray cloud over my head and saying, ugh, life is just one big pile of poop, then guess what I'm going to attract? So you got to be very careful about what you place your thoughts on, where you place your focus and your energy, because it truly is what you create then in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Very powerful stuff. Thank you for that. So then, okay, tell me how to go from stuck then to unstuck in any area of my life, or in a general sense, because obviously we haven't, can't go into every sort of idea, but in a general sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's many steps, right? So, well, not many, I won't say that. That sounds overwhelming. There's several steps and we can't go into all of them in depth.
Sure.
But I think, step number one is accept your situation for what it is. And I know that can sound a little counterintuitive. Well, if I hate it, why would I accept it? Well, the fact is that when you're hating on it or when you're resisting it, you're essentially strengthening it. I mean, think about when you go to the gym and you lift weights. That's resistance training, right? You're building that muscle. Well, the same thing is true about your situation or your circumstance in life. If you don't just accept it for what it is, you're basically just going to lock it into place because you keep resisting and pushing on it. So number one is to accept it as it is, but know that you can change it. I mean, I'm not saying accept it as it is, that's it, you're done. No, it's just like, here's where I am right now. And then step two is essentially taking that responsibility, realizing that you created it through whatever choices and decisions you've made in the past. You are where you are today, and that's just fine. But by doing that, by taking control and realizing you do create your life, it's very empowering because now you can set forth in motion plans and steps to deliberately create what you want. And then a really key point is looking at your subconscious beliefs. What are we thinking and operating from, right? So these subconscious beliefs, they get programmed in at an early age. Often they come from parents or other figures of authority, because that's what we do when we're kids, right? We absorb information. We look, we observe, and that's then what we take in. And we believe it to be true. So to take your other example that you just used, maybe I learned at a young age that there's a price to be paid. If I want to have a really successful career, I got to pay the price. I got to sacrifice my family to do that. That's a subconscious belief I'm walking around with. And so the book helps you do this is identify those subconscious beliefs that could be limiting you now. Maybe they served you at one point, but they could be limiting what you're doing now. So identifying those, B, kind of looking at where did they come from? And are they really my beliefs, or did I pick them up from someone else? And are they serving me anymore? Do they have to be my beliefs anymore? I'm an adult. I'm my own person. How about I create my own beliefs? And so it walks through how to release those limiting beliefs, how to reprogram yourself essentially with new beliefs that are yours, that serve you, and are setting you on the right track. So that's a key step. And then another one is essentially learning how to tune out those negative voices that we hear all too often, right? You have a great idea and immediately in your head, it's like, no, you can't do that. Who do you think you are to do that? Right? Is quieting that and learning to tap into the positive. And there is a positive voice in there. It's just that you have to learn how to access that. And I teach that in the book. How do you tap into that positive part of you? And so those are some of the key foundational steps to work through. As you do that, as you sort of reprogram those subconscious beliefs, as you start tapping into that true self that you have, you feel it starting to open up. And that's when you can start to take, sort of forward momentum steps in terms of getting really clear about what it is you really want in life, right? Sometimes we don't know that. It's a very simple question, but we can't answer it. So it's looking at what you don't want. And based off of that, what do you want? And starting to create that clarity around that and looking at what is sort of what brings you joy, what brings you passion, and starting to lay the groundwork essentially for moving forward again and planning your life the way you want it to, setting for yourself a vision, a goal, and then action steps to get there. So that's the nutshell. Obviously there's more to it than that, but hopefully that gives you a little sense of some of the steps that are in there and how I guide the readers through the book.
No, it's absolutely fantastic, and we can all feel a little lost sometimes, can't we? And when I've been lost, maybe I've not always done it right, but when I've been lost, maybe I've just sort of gone with the flow in a sense, and if I really don't know what decision to take, I kind of wait and then see what my gut feeling's telling me in the end.
Yeah, and your gut feelings are, there's a lot of validity in that. Your feelings, essentially, your feelings and your emotions are like an internal GPS. They do guide us. They're sending us information. And of course, when people talk about their intuition or their gut, I mean, it's because it's sort of a feeling you have in that solar plexus area, right near your gut. So gut feelings, there's a lot to them. Now, I'm not saying, shut down the logic, don't listen to the left brain or any of that. Obviously, we need that logic to sort of help us through our daily lives. Cool. But we're so quick to say, don't make an emotional decision. Don't listen to your feelings, what logically makes sense. But if you only follow the logic, then you're also kind of listening to some of that ego chatter that's going on too, right? Because that ego is scared most of the time. If you want to do something new, it's kind of like, oh my God, wait, what? We're doing something new? I don't think so. Amygdala, fight or flight just kicks in right away and all that chatter starts. And then you start convincing yourself that logically it doesn't make sense. But if you think about your life, many decisions that you've made on that gut feeling or just emotionally how you felt that, your heart was really in a different place. And if you followed that, chances are it was a really good decision, and it was something that you really are happy that you did, because those feelings, our heart, our gut, those really are helpful tools to sort of say to us, well, that's what's in alignment with me. I mean, maybe logically, I should go to law school and become a lawyer, and that makes sense because then I'll have a professional job. But maybe my heart is somewhere else. Maybe my heart wants to do something a little more creative. And, there's this fight going on between them. Well, maybe you won't make money that way, blah, blah, blah. But if you follow your heart and you do what you're passionate about, chances are that money will follow anyway, right? I mean, that's an example around careers and that kind of thing. But just to sort of illustrate it, that your gut and your feelings, don't dismiss them, because they are giving you real information about what's right for you.
And again, really well explained, and as it says in one of your chapters, are we connecting with our ego or our divine self? So thank you for sharing that. And also, I think we have to get rid of tapes, as you've said in this interview. Releasing the past, that's an important part as well.
Yeah, releasing the past, and sort of in the context of that, forgiving. Because a lot of the past that we hold on to is the bad stuff, right? It's sort of, we hold those grudges, we blame people for things that happened to us. We love to point the finger and say, well, if that hadn't happened, then this wouldn't have happened. And really, the way to move past that, the only way to move past that, is to forgive. And that can be a tough one, because especially if you really do feel like you've been wronged, it's like, really? I have to do the forgiving? I'm the one that was wronged. But there's two things that I talk about in terms of forgiveness. So the first thing is, think of it this way. Is it something that you sometimes do yourself? So sometimes when we really, our buttons are pushed and we are just like outraged over something, if you really honestly look in the mirror and say, well, wait a minute, do I do that myself sometimes? Maybe that's why my button was pushed. So like someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like crazed over it. When was the last time you didn't turn on your blinker? When was the last time you cut someone off? That's a very minor example. So, I mean, to take something that maybe is a bigger wound, right? A more traumatic experience. The other way to look at forgiveness is this, that if you forgive someone, you are not condoning them, and you're not letting them off the hook. In fact, you are releasing yourself. And that's really the key, I think, especially with those bigger wounds that sometimes we have, that things have happened to us and we just cannot forgive that other person. Forgiving does not mean condoning. It doesn't mean that it's saying, oh, it's okay that you did that to me. Yeah, have at it, and I'm just going to let you off the hook and you get away scot-free. Yeah. It's not about that. It's about releasing yourself. That other person still has to go on living with whatever they did. Right? They have their own set of demons that they're going to have to deal with. But until you release yourself, you cannot move past those situations or those experiences that happen to you. So think of forgiveness as something that's actually helping you, right? I'm releasing myself from the clutches or the hostage situation that I find myself in, just stuck in these feelings. And until you do that, those feelings are going to eat away at you, and they're just going to be there the whole time, kind of like acid inside, just eating away. So release yourself so that you can set yourself free from whatever happened to you in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it may be purpose, when someone comes across your book, they may have come across because they're stuck in not knowing what their purpose is. How do you find your purpose? That's a big one, I know.
Yeah, I mean, finding your purpose. So, this idea of having like a higher purpose or a calling, it's sort of this sense that there's something greater outside of us that we're called to do, right? That it serve in some way that's sort of contributing to the world positively. And I think some of the way, I have a whole process in the book for how to do that in terms of looking at what you want, where your skills and knowledge are right now, where do some of these things overlap, looking at different areas of your life and seeing, when you really do plot it out that way and make different lists of what you really want, you find that thematically different, the same thing sort of shows up over and over again, and you start to get a really clear sense of, oh, okay, I get it. I mean, when I was doing that for myself, what I realized was across different aspects of my life, the idea of helping people and serving people was something that just kept coming up again and again, not just in a work situation, but with family,
That's
with
interesting.
relationships,
Yeah.
different parts of my life. So you'll find that thematically things come up. And then you can start to look at, okay, if that's kind of where my passion is, if I feel like I have some kind of purpose in that way, how can I actually go about creating that in my life? Like, what form does that take in my life? And I think the crucial thing to know here is, you don't have to find a purpose and a calling and then decide that you must make money doing it and it has to be your job, right? It has to be your career, because that's a lot of pressure. But it's more about, how do you bring these things into you, right? So how do you go about doing that? And one way is to sort of look at, is it a hobby that you love? Is it a cause or a charity that you feel passionately about that you want to get involved in? Like, what are the little steps that you can take to bring this thing into your life so that you can start to kind of, as it were, try it on, make sure that it is really something that you're passionate about, and then kind of follow it from there. So it's not this sort of radical change. It's more like an incremental, just bringing new ideas into your life that feed that passion and that tap into what you feel might be your calling and your higher purpose.
Yeah, there's so much to this book and to your work, because you can apply this to so many areas of a person's life, or they could just home it in just to one that they think is the bigger one that's they wish they could help to heal, in a sense. What's it feel like then for yourself to live the life that you're living now, where it's all in balance? Are you just so used to it, or are you appreciative of it as well?
Oh, I'm so appreciative of it. I mean, I practice gratitude every day, and that's a big thing that I think that everybody can benefit from, because when you're practicing gratitude, you are placing your focus on what I have, what's going right, right? So what we were talking about earlier in terms
Yeah.
of where you place your focus. So practicing gratitude is sort of a shortcut to getting to that higher vibrating place and training yourself to focus on the positive and what's going well. But I am incredibly, whoops, there's my dog
Saying
barking,
hello.
sorry. Uh, Incredibly appreciative of what's going on, because I have such a contrast with how things used to be. And so the thing about contrast is, when things aren't going well, sometimes it's actually really helpful, because it helps you get clear on what you do want. And then because you have that contrast, it makes you all the more appreciative
Yeah.
of when you get what you want, right? So imagine if we didn't have any contrast at all, or we didn't have any of those highs and lows, it'd just be sort of like one flat monotone, right? So don't dismiss the contrast, because it does show up to help you then be appreciative of when things are going really well. Yeah, so I am incredibly appreciative for the balance that I've created and the life that I'm living right now. And I'm also very aware that I'm creating it, right? So it's not like I just created it and now I'm sitting back and, hey, I did it. It's all good. No, it's kind of an ongoing process, right?
Right, of
And
course.
sometimes I find myself falling out of balance, right? I find myself, well, oh my God, this week I worked so hard and I'm tired now and I didn't really see my husband that much or so, so it's like little tweaks that oh, wait a minute, I'm kind of lapsing back into that old pattern, and just becoming aware of it and then making those little tweaks as you move forward. So it's always kind of a little evolving process.
Yeah, now just go into the law of attraction, which a lot of your work is, well, not a lot of your work, but the work is based on these ideas as well. But in general, law of attraction, it has got a bad rap, in the sense of, it's instant gratification, money will sort everything out, and we don't need to take care of the emotional side at all. What's your take on law of attraction and the movies that have been out there as well?
Yeah, I have to say, it's kind of gotten a bad rap, because, and especially the movie The Secret, for all the good that it did a lot of harm as well, in the sense that it created this idea that, well, if I just envision what I want and I think about it a lot and I have positive thoughts, hey presto, it'll appear. And it's really not the way it works.
No.
I mean, yes, that's part of it, but there are multiple different steps that you have to take, right? So there's kind of an inner part where we're setting our inner intentions, and then there's an outward part. So, I mean, just on the inner part, yes, you have to set a vision for what you want, but you also have to be very detailed about it, right? So let's say you want a new job. It's not enough to just say, I want a new job. What is the job? How many hours do you want to commute? How many hours do you want to work? How much do you want to get paid? What field is this in? What position is this in, right? So, I mean real details around this. So you are being very specific about what you want. And then we have to check in to make sure that we actually subconsciously are allowing ourselves to have it, right? So as I was talking earlier about those subconscious beliefs, if we're walking around with some subconscious belief that we're not worthy of such a job, or we're not smart enough to have it, or we don't have enough qualifications, if we subconsciously are thinking that, then guess what? That's going to override our conscious desire to have it. So we have to check to see where we're coming at from subconsciously, and whether we need to reprogram those subconscious beliefs to get us in line with what we want, because that conscious and subconscious have got to be aligned for it to happen. And then kind of the third part of that inner work is essentially allowing for it to happen and detaching from the outcome. And what I mean by that is, sometimes we think, so to take that example of the job, well, the job has to be in this company, and I have to get it this way, and that'll all be perfect. And that's the only way that we're open to receiving it, right? But if we detach from how it's going to actually happen, maybe our dream job is going to show up in a completely different company that we're not even aware of right now. Maybe it's going to come to us in a way that we would never have imagined. You meet such and such at a social event who knows somebody over here who connects you to the right person to send your resume to. Who could have planned that? But if you were really focusing on, well, I have to send, I've got to do it a certain way. So it's detaching from that outcome and how the item is going to come to you, or the thing that you want is going to come to you. So those are sort of parts of the inner piece. And then, and this is really important, the outward piece. You got to do something. You got to take action, right? You can't just think all this stuff and then sit back on the couch and eat bonbons. You got to actually take some steps towards the thing you want. And I think that that's part of what's been missing from The Secret and from other, discussions around the law of attraction. It's not all inner work. You got to do some outward work too. So once you've gotten really specific, you set your intentions and done all that great work, then being clear about, okay, what can I do today that takes me one step closer towards this dream job or this dream, whatever it is that I want, and starting to lay out an action plan for yourself and things that you can actively do that draw you closer to it. So there's a little bit more to the whole thing than I want it, I'm going to think about it, and it's going to appear for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that action plan is putting is magnetically attracting, like for like, in a sense, the life that you want, or the experience, or whatever it may be that you think is going to bring you out of chaos and back into balance, and back into happiness. But I'll just say this again, as you've said in this interview, actually, you've got to be happy with everything you've got now. If what you've got now is causing you to go out of balance, you have to come back into balance and be happy with everything, and realize it's perfect, because it's a teaching method.
Yeah, you
want to emphasize
you essentially just have to accept it the way it is, right?
Yeah.
And not accept it as in, oh, this is my lot in life, this is what it's going to be. No, it's just accept that it is what it is right now. But that doesn't mean it can't change. So accept it for what it is, but then know that you can take steps to change it. You just have to take personal responsibility in terms of the fact that, okay, I created it, I made some choices and decisions, and here I am. But that also has good news to it, because it means that I can make new choices and new decisions from where I am right now, so that my future is different from what I've experienced in the past.
Yes, and not to be scared that if it means having to move on or do something different, because the fear is not going to bring you happiness.
Right. And, fear can keep us stuck. right? That's a big one. The fear of the unknown, the fear of change. God forbid anything should change. And of course, when we're talking about all this stuff, we're talking about personal change, right? We're talking about inner change. And of course, that can be the scariest of all. But the beauty of that is that, like I said, once you start looking inside to see what's there, it's not scary. There are no monsters in there. You actually are empowering yourself because you're gaining knowledge. You're gaining knowledge of, okay, why is it that I keep doing this over and over again in my life? Why do I keep just playing out the same old storyline just with different scenery and different players in it, right? Well, it's because there's something subconsciously going on. You're subconsciously thinking or believing something that's causing you to act this out. Well, gee, don't you want to change that pattern? Aren't you kind of sick of it? And if you get that knowledge about what is it subconsciously that has sort of been driving my decisions or, driving my choices, then you have the power to change it, right?
Yes,
You have the power to make it something that you want. So it can be a little scary at the beginning, but the point is to focus on how empowering it is and how you can actually turn it all around and essentially create the life you actually want instead of just having to keep chugging along the way you are, dissatisfied with things.
Right. And just to go back to what we've said before, not trying to be a repeating record, but just so there's a bit of clarification here. What if what you're doing you really enjoy, yet it's so time consuming because you have to put so much time into it to make it work, and you're scared if you don't, not scared. That's coming from the fear, isn't it? But if you don't put that time into it, then you're not going to be able to get it off the ground because it needs time for it to be born, basically, whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Well, I think the key there, Kevin, is the enjoyment piece. When you said you're really enjoying it, right? I mean, I think the point is you find something that makes you feel really alive. Okay. And if that makes you feel really alive and you feel that you want to spend 70% of your time doing that, and that works for you, have at it, right? Like balance doesn't mean it has to be 10% in this part of my life, 10% here, 10%, like 10 parts of my life, 10% in each. Balance is about what you want it to be, right? So maybe some part of your life does get 40% of you and another part gets 20%.
Good point.
But that's what works for you. And so it is a little bit of trial and error. Now, if you're not enjoying it, and you're grinding out that 70% of your life into that thing, then boy, is that ever going to have an impact on everything else, right? That's where I would say, hey, I think you're out of balance. You're spending 70% of your time doing something that you don't even enjoy. Something is definitely wrong with that picture, right?
Right.
So there's that about the balance. And then I think the other part of it is just recognizing that me time is really important, right? Like taking a break for yourself. Giving yourself a timeout, even if it's just for 10 minutes a day. I mean, what's that? That's 1% of a whole day, 10 minutes, to just unplug, do whatever makes you happy. Like go outside and get some fresh air, eat your lunch on a park bench, listen to some music, bust a dance move if you feel like it, right? Read 10 pages of a good book, whatever it is. But give yourself a little oasis of time each day so that you're feeding your soul, right? Even if you are loving what you're doing, but you're spending so much time in it, give yourself a little bit of a break. Give yourself a breather to just unplug and just have a little quiet time each day, because that will help nurture you and also revitalize and re-energize you as well.
Absolutely. And you talk as well in the book about clearing the mind and finding the white space to create. Just explain that briefly, if you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sometimes we want to find clarity, but there's so many thoughts going on in our mind, right? It's, some people call it monkey mind. It's like that never ending to-do list that's running. Oh, got to go here, got to go there. Oh, got to make this phone call, check in with that person. I mean, it never ends, right? So it's about taking that quiet time for yourself. And one way to do that is to meditate. And, I'll be honest, when I first thought about meditating, I was thinking hippies and total lack of productivity. And you got to be kidding me. But I was open to it. I tried it. And now I do advocate for it because it's really, people think that if you meditate, you're essentially just like, you're wiping your mind out of everything and it's like you're turning your brain to mush. No, it's actually the opposite. You're sharpening your focus. You're sharpening your mind. And so if you can clear your mind through something like meditation, actually you can set yourself up for a much more productive day, a much more efficient use of your energy, because you're getting clear on your priorities. And, a couple of other things that I talk about in there too are, setting boundaries on your time, learning to say no. I mean, that's a big one. We all say yes to everything that comes our way. And guess what? The more we say yes to everything, the less time there is for us. The less time there is for us to even have space for ourselves, to create that quiet time for ourselves. So it is about really respecting your time in a way that you're placing value on it. We spend our time giving it away to so many other sources, right? To other people, to work, to social media, to television, to just doing nothing, right? It's like,
True.
How about valuing your own time? Which I know can be a radical concept. Wait, I matter? I get time for myself? Yes, you do. And it's really important to take that time for yourself so that you can find clarity. You can find that quietness of mind to just get clear on what you want. What do I want? And what are the steps I'm going to take to get there? If you don't have that quiet time, you can't actually ever have that conversation with yourself.
It's just so true that, and that quiet time can just be sat in bed before you go to sleep, whatever it is. But that quiet time could be a very powerful, beautiful time, because you're actually setting yourself to go in the direction that of whatever it is that's going to bring you happiness for the long term as well, and for the people around you as well. It's a very empowering time. And do you still do that? You obviously still do that process, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I meditate virtually every day.
Wonderful.
And I do it in the morning because that works for me before anything starts to happen. I get up, I walk my dog. You heard her barking, so you know she's there. And then I take, literally just 10 or 15 minutes to just very calmly in the morning clear my mind. And I got to tell you, it makes me so much more productive, because then I approach my day very centered and very calm and very clear about what needs to get done that day.
Right.
What's important versus what's urgent, right? Like urgent usually means distraction. But important, that's the good stuff, right? That's the stuff that really matters, and setting about creating your day around the important stuff. So yeah, I absolutely do it. And I encourage other people to do it too, because believe me, it's not just some hippie fad.
No.
It actually really does work. And of course, there's lots of scientific evidence being done right now to sort of talk about and prove the benefits of meditation for your mind and for your body, that it really is this really powerful thing that you can do. And you don't need anything to do it. Just a little bit of quiet space and time. That's it. 5, 10, 15 minutes. That's all it takes.
Yeah. Now, I really do embrace your book and what you're saying. It's just, it speaks a lot of truth, what you're saying. It does, and it has done all throughout the interview. And I'm not here to sell books, but I'm here to say that, that this is so true, right? Well, to me, it's just so obvious, having been through the mill myself and realizing that if only this was available when I needed it, but it is available now, and it's all now is all that matters. But what about anyone that's coming over material like this, and yet they're reading the book, or they've read the book, yet it's still not working for them? Is that because, and I can't see why it wouldn't, but is that because they're the resistance to it?
Usually, yes. I mean, that's very insightful. Usually, we need to be ready. Right? We need to be ready to actually make the change. If someone had said to me, hey, you should really go to a life coach, and said it to me a year before I did it, I probably would have poo-pooed them out of the room. Like, what are you talking about? Blah, So you do have to be in a place where you're ready. And I think, as you work through the book, I mean, certainly with the book, if you just read it, then, okay, you read it and you've got some information. But it's not going to have as big an impact as if you actually work through the steps. I mean, and that's the key, right? Is that, I hate to tell you, but there is no silver bullet. It ain't going to happen overnight. It does require a little bit of WORK, right? That 4-letter word. Right. You are going to have to do a little bit of work. And so if you're working the processes, if you're working the steps, then you definitely will see that impact. But if you're just reading it just to be like, okay, well, I just want to read it and get through it, then yeah, probably you're not going to have the impact. And maybe you're not ready, right? Like maybe you're not ready to really look at those subconscious beliefs and start that reprogramming process or get in touch with your true self. I mean, those are, let's face it, those can be big steps for some people. So work the processes because they really do have an impact.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that it's nice and simple as well. You've kept it simple, which is always good because I think when it's the spirituality in it then is simple as well. It was for myself when reading it. Okay, now how can people get in contact with yourself if they if they feel that actually you're the right life coach to come to in the sense of helping them through what they're trying to work through?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Website or email is great. So my website is alexbratty.com. That's spelled ALEXBRATTY.com. Or just send me an email, alex@alexbratty.com. And actually, as part of my book tour and to your viewers, I'm offering 20-minute free consultations. So if anybody watching is feeling stuck, frustrated, burned out, overwhelmed, stressed, whatever, I'm offering these free consultations. So get in touch with me and we can talk about where you're at, where you want to be, and how do you build the bridge to get there.
Excellent. And that's available via Skype as well.
Yes, that's a great point. Absolutely. So I do phone sessions, I do Skype, with or without video, whatever you prefer.
Yep.
So yes, it doesn't really matter where you're located. Such is the joy of technology. It allows us to connect and make the miles shrink, right?
Absolutely. Just as this interview. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
What would you say then is the most important message of the book then?
What a great question. I think the big message of the book is that you truly can create the life you want. Even if you think that is a pipe dream right now, even if you think that I am just floating on some cuckoo land out here saying that, it truly can happen for you. And it really is just about taking that initial step and keep putting one foot in front of the other, realizing that you created the life you already have. So it means you can create the life that you want. You're just going to be more deliberate about it and much more self-aware about those steps and the choices and the decisions that you're making.
Fantastic. Well, I just want to say it's been a real pleasure having you on today. It really has. It's been very, very interesting, and I'm so glad that we got connected up and that you've come on the show. So, Alex Bratty, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It's been a terrific time and a great interview. Thank you so much.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.